Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're looking at Sails of Stone and uncovering exactly how Roman sailors controlled the Colosseum's roof. Now, when we picture this iconic ancient amphitheater, we almost always think of gladiators and massive stone arches, right? But there's this hidden, high-altitude story of ancient engineering that often gets completely overlooked. Let's dive right into this fascinating mechanism that functioned, quite literally, above it all. So how do you air condition the ancient world? I mean, really think about the brutal reality of an all-day spectacle in ancient Rome. These games didn't just last an hour or two, they ran continuously from sunrise to sunset. Picture being trapped out there under the scorching Mediterranean summer sun without any relief whatsoever. How do you possibly keep a massive crowd from just passing out from heat stroke in an era that was centuries before electricity and modern air conditioning? To really wrap our heads around the scale of this challenge, look at this number, 50,000. That is a massive, massive logistical problem. You have 50,000 sweating, shouting spectators packed shoulder to shoulder on those tiered seats for hours on end. The sheer amount of body heat generated by a crowd that size is staggering. It's basically the equivalent of a modern mega stadium, but they had to manage it entirely with first-century technology. And, it wasn't just the body heat. The Colosseum's exterior and all that seating were originally built using massive blocks of travertine. That's a really bright, glaringly white stone. Under that relentless summer sun, that gleaming white stone acted like a giant solar oven, amplifying and reflecting the searing heat right back onto the crowd. Without some sort of intervention, sitting in those bleachers would have been absolutely unbearable. It would have transformed a day of entertainment into a grueling test of survival. Well, enter the Romans' brilliant solution to this total environmental nightmare, the velarium. Basically, a massive retractable canvas awning. It functioned like a colossal sunshade, screening the seating areas from the harsh rays of the sun while leaving just the central arena floor uncovered. That way, it perfectly spotlighted the action down below. It was an absolute masterpiece of ancient design. Now, to hold up a canvas of that unprecedented size, you need some serious structural support, specifically 240 heavy wooden masts. The Romans fixed these massive poles into specially designed stone sockets all along the upper corners of the amphitheater's top level, which was known as the attic. And amazingly, those sockets are actually still visible if you visit the ruins today, just sitting there waiting to be part of an active, moving system. And operating this whole setup, it definitely wasn't as simple as just pulling a single curtain. It was a highly synchronized mechanical process. Long strips of fabric were wound around drums mounted on that enormous wooden frame. The whole system was anchored by a central ring suspended way up high over the arena. Winches, located outside the Colosseum, pulled ropes connected to pulleys at the top of the mast, which raised or lowered that central ring. From there, 240 individual fabric strips could be deployed or retracted independently. Deploying the whole thing simultaneously required a perfectly coordinated effort by at least 240 operators. But here is a truly fascinating historical detail. This entire velarium system was not your standard terrestrial architecture. According to the sources, it was rigged similarly to a sail on a ship. Suddenly it clicks. You aren't looking at a traditional building roof. You are looking at an incredibly complex piece of naval engineering, suspended hundreds of feet in the air over the center of Rome. Which, as you can imagine, presents a very unique hiring problem for the emperor. I mean, who do you even bring in to safely operate an ocean of heavy canvas suspended high up in the treacherous, shifting winds of a stone valley without tangling the ropes or tearing the fabric to shreds? You definitely can't just hand this job over to standard construction workers or a bunch of gladiators. Well, the solution actually becomes obvious when you look at the overlapping skill sets. Operating a warship in the wind versus managing the Colosseum's massive awning. Think about it. Operating a Roman warship requires managing vast expanses of canvas, manipulating really complex pulley systems, coordinating split-second timing among dozens of crew members, and fighting against unpredictable winds. Managing the Colosseum's awning required the exact same expertise. The arena was essentially a dry-docked ship. So they turned to the absolute best in the business, the Roman Imperial Navy. These guys were really the unsung heroes of the amphitheater. The emperor brought in actual expert sailors from the imperial fleet to take on the unique mechanical role of operating this complex velarium awning system. They were the only ones who possessed the highly specialized knowledge of knots, tension, and wind dynamics required to actually keep the audience shaded and safe. The contrast here is just incredible. Down in the sand of the arena, you have complete and utter chaos. Bloody combat, wild exotic animals, deafening noise, and just raw violence. But right above their heads, high up at the very top of the structure, there's this silent, pristine, and highly disciplined naval operation taking place. Sailors are perfectly synchronized, running across the catwalks, reading the wind, and seamlessly adjusting the massive sails of stone. Let's take a second to look at the human element here, though, because asking who were these sailors reveals a pretty harsh reality of the Roman world. These weren't volunteers looking for a fun gig. They were typically enslaved young men and boys taken from conquered countries all around the globe. They were forced into the Navy, where they served punishing, grueling terms lasting anywhere from 15 to 30 years. It was a life of incredibly hard labor. Yet, despite that really grim reality, historical records reveal something kind of surprising. Being assigned to this Colosseum roof detail was actually considered a rare privilege among the fleet. For these men who normally spent their decades of service just staring at the endless open sea or rowing in the cramped hulls of warships, this assignment was often their one and only chance to actually see the magnificent imperial capital of Rome with their own eyes. But there was a massive incentive waiting at the end of this journey, the ultimate reward. If these men survived those 15 to 30 years of pulling ropes, weathering the elements, and keeping the emperors and citizens cool, they earned the ultimate prize. Upon honorable discharge from the Navy, they didn't just get to go home. They were granted complete freedom and, most importantly, full Roman citizenship, which entirely changed their social status and the future of their descendants forever. So, when we look back at the Velatarium, we really aren't just looking at some old piece of cloth. It is the ancient precursor to the modern retractable roof stadium. We're looking at a marvel of engineering that functioned as a massive, synchronized machine. The Colosseum and its soaring canvas roof laid the mechanical and conceptual groundwork for the mega stadiums we sit in today. The Romans were literally manipulating their environment on a monumental scale over 2 millennia ago. Which leaves us with a pretty compelling question to think about. Next time you are at a modern stadium, who are the hidden laborers making your entertainment possible? The games of Rome were built on the backs of thousands of unseen sailors working high up in the sun to make the impossible look effortless. It begs the question, what other ancient miracles of architecture were actually just massive, human-powered machines hiding in plain sight? Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and I hope it forever changes how you view the greatest arena in history.